The Hangar Z Podcast welcomes Chief Pilot Frank Peck from Omaha Police Department's Air Support Unit.
But the part of that story to this day that's still impactful to me is when I got to her phone was ringing. Her phone was about this far from her reach. She had it on a charger. So when she climbed out, she slipped, drops the phone falls, she falls, gets her leg stuck, and she can't get to the phone. It's her children calling her.
Welcome to the Hangar Z Podcast, brought to you by Vertical Helicasts and partnered with Vertical Valor Magazine. In this episode, John Gray and Jack Schonely have a conversation with Chief Pilot Frank Peck of the Omaha Police Department. Frank brings a unique and well-rounded perspective to law enforcement aviation, having spent many years with the Nebraska State Patrol, including time as a canine handler, where he experienced firsthand the value of air support. He eventually shifted his focus to aviation, advancing from a part-time tactical flight officer to captain and chief pilot of Aviation Support Division. During his tenure, Frank led significant expansions in aircraft capabilities, mission equipment, and aviation facilities, all while actively supporting troopers from the air. He now brings that wealth of experience to the Omaha Police Department, where he continues as chief pilot. Known for his hands-on leadership style, Frank is committed to continually improving every aspect of the unit that he leads. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the Hangar Z Podcast. We truly appreciate all of the support so we can bring these conversations to all of you. Thank you to our sponsors, Spectralab Incorporated, Night Flight Concepts, and Anodyne Electronics Manufacturing.
Welcome to the Hangar Z Podcast, brought to you by Vertical Helicasts. The Hangar Z Podcast is the first and only podcast dedicated to promoting and exploring the personnel and equipment behind the missions in public safety aviation.
Still southbound, skidding to a stop. Stand by here. Looks like they're getting ready to bail. Heads up, guys, bailing. Okay, the guy, he's running through the house, jumping the fence, threw the shotgun, threw something out. Grabbing the shotgun. Don't go over that fence. Don't go over that fence. Grab the shotgun again. He is armed. Stay there. Hold your position.
Welcome to the Hangar Z Podcast, brought to you by Vertical Helicasts and partnered with Vertical Valor Magazine. I'm your host, Jack Schonely. With me today for this conversation is the creator of the Hangar Z Podcast, John Gray. How are you, John?
Good, Jack. I'm tempted to say something else, and I won't say what that something else is going to be, but really good to be here and happy to record with our friend Frank and Brian, and of course, Commander Jack Schonely.
Well, the reason we're laughing will be well known at ABSCON, and we'll just leave it at that. Brian Smith is joining us today again. Brian with a Y, Smith. That's right. Brian, welcome back.
Hey, Jack. Happy to be here.
Well, we're always happy to have Brian's perspective and his experience, and for a lot of reasons, but safety being a big one, because safety comes into the conversation constantly, as it should. And Brian's perspective on that is by far the best one out there. So we're really thrilled to have Brian Smith with us today. And of course, our guest today is Chief Pilot Frank Peck from the Omaha Police Department. Frank, welcome back to the podcast.
Well, thank you, all three, and a little humbling to be here, but looking forward to it. And sure there'll be quite a few laughs, and it's always nice when we can get a little nervous in front of three of your mentors. So appreciate that when I found out that even Brian was going to be on today.
Yeah.
So. I wouldn't miss it.
Full court press, man.
Thanks a lot, you guys.
No, Frank is easy to talk with, and we just had him on recently for an election that he was involved in, and he's been on the podcast before, and he has a lot of experience in this business. So we're anxious to dive right in and get all of that. But it didn't happen overnight where you end up the chief pilot at Omaha. You had a long journey before Omaha, almost like a career and then another career, which is really interesting. We're going to get into the details of that, but walk us through the journey, where you grew up and your Army and aviation and law enforcement, how those things were influenced and how you got to where you're at.
Well, I think like most of us, pretty blessed. I mean, that's kind of what it comes down to. Probably one of the luckiest people around, in my opinion. I grew up in Nebraska, small town up in South Sioux, which is 2 hours north of where I currently live. And always kind of had a fascination with aviation. And like most of us, I'm guessing on this podcast, with the exception of maybe Brian, was probably not the best student or the most stellar young teenager, made my mistakes and made quite a few of them and did everything that everybody else did, but got lucky enough to, my father was a career military guy. So he gave me an option, and my option was, either you get into school right now or go to the military. And he didn't care one way or the other. I chose the military.
And so was it under duress, Frank?
No.
You joined?
It's funny you say that. I should clarify that. No, it wasn't that at all. And I wanted to do something. I was tired of school, just kind of wanted to go do something else, and no pressure or anything, not in a bad way or anything like that. Just went in, wanted to go in my head, as a young man. I thought, well, I'll just make a career out of this. But
right.
Fortunately, I was lucky enough to, have some good things happen to me at the military, and ended up, with the State Patrol years later.
Nice. Tell us a little bit about the military experience, how that influenced you, changed you, because it changes everybody, some more than others. But how did that affect the steps going forward from there?
Well, I think like everybody, it's kind of establishes some pretty needed discipline, which obviously carries over to everything that, where we're all at now and where we've all been. I think that started there. And then, at the time, I always thought being a pilot would be kind of a cool thing. I went down the path of being a medic. Funny story, I was always jumping out of the airplanes and getting dropped out of helicopters and stuff. And I said to a couple buddies of mine, I'm like, someday I'm going to learn to fly. And they all, typical, no, come on, whatever. Got lucky enough that at some point in my career, I got picked up to go to be a medic at the CID office, which was at the time was the Criminal Investigations Command. Started wearing plain clothes and got a whole different view, which took me down that path of law enforcement, which is always where I kind of wanted to go to. And I'll age myself with some of us growing up with Chips and Starsky and Hutch. That was I got to go do that. Yeah, I got lucky enough to get into there. Had some great mentors that taught me and gave me some leadership skills. And next thing you know, my choice was to stay in or get out. And I had the opportunity to kind of wanted to come back home and join the Nebraska State Patrol. And was lucky enough at that time to get hired. And applied once and was hired. I think they got to the bottom of the barrel, and I was there. And bam, we'll take that guy. So. Yeah, and that was quite a few years ago.
Let's go back to your medic stuff for a minute. That's a demanding MOS.
Yeah, and it was a great MOS. When you look at everything now, all those skill sets that you get, and I know it's changed as everything has changed. And but at the time, it was. I had a funny story. I had a cousin who's kind of like my sister. She was a flight nurse. So she and I were talking, and, she was like, oh, you should, while you're doing that, start working towards this. You can get out and come, maybe be a flight paramedic or do, something like that, or nursing school, whatever. And I remember telling him, like, no. I said, I think if I'm going to get out, if I'm not going to work the law enforcement side, I'm going to go be a pilot. I'm going to fly. So I always kind of had those two things, conflict. I wouldn't call it conflict, but kind of those two parallels that I wanted to do. And again, lucky enough, blessed enough to get to be one of several helicopter pilots in the country.
Yeah. Was it the flying in the Army that got that bug going, or did you have the flying bug as a kid, or how did that work out?
Well, I think I had it as a kid, but yeah, it started to really progress because it seemed like those pilots lived a pretty good life. It just kind of carried over, and I don't even know how to really describe it. It did. It just started there and just kind of progressed. And then when I was in the CID office, that really transitioned me over to, wanting to go on the law enforcement side. And again, early 90, roughly. The Nebraska State Patrol at the time had Mustangs, the 5.0 Mustangs.
Oh, yeah. Those were hot at the time, weren't they?
Yeah. So I'm not proud to say this. I had been stopped by several of those 5.0 Mustangs in high school and growing up, and thought that was cool. And I was like, if I could, I'd like to go work there and drive one of those.
Yeah.
So got out of the military, and like I said, was lucky enough to get hired by the State Patrol, and that's 30 years later, got out of that business.
Did you get to drive the Mustang?
I did.
Yeah.
Which will probably go down that path. I didn't drive it very long because I had another career change, but I did get to drive it for a while, and man, they were a blast.
Well, since you brought up Starsky and Hutch, did you ever slide across the hood of the Mustang?
Well,
I'm just curious.
maybe.
Is it on video?
No.
Oh, darn.
Going all the way back, Jack, as you know, no, we didn't have all those. There was very limited cameras at that time.
There was nobody with a big...
We're usually in front of IA most of the time.
There was nobody doing the camera with a big VHS recorder on their shoulder, getting you sliding across the hood?
Gosh, that would have been awesome.
Wouldn't it? Yeah.
I will say I damaged the hood once somehow. Yeah,
somehow.
There.
So he did slide. All right. That's good.
As you're talking about getting stopped as a kid, the first thing that came to mind is, you had to disclose that in your background investigation. It makes you think, that's one of the most intimidating parts of the hiring process, right? Is going through the background investigation. You think about all the things you gotta write and remember, and they're like, did I ever get stopped? Well, yeah, I got stopped twice. And you end up with this book, this yellow tablet book of all the things you've ever done wrong in your life. And you've got to hand it over. That was like one of the most humbling things. I thought I was a good person, but here I am handing over this book of things that I've done wrong. And so again, go back to you, Frank. I can imagine me like, oh yeah, I was stopped by you, which actually made me want to work for you. So
I think at some point I said that, but I'll take that a little step further with some of the questions during the background and all those things. Then, have you ever issued prescription drugs to somebody? Have you ever done this? There were a lot of things that, that were allowed on the military side that actually I had to explain and write that book.
Oh, I'll bet.
Did you do this? Have you done this? Have you done this? Yes. And as you're checking yes, the poor background investigators are going, oh my gosh, hold on, this might be a quick release here. But once you explain it and do all that, it all makes sense. But there's a lot of things that they asked back then that, because I was allowed to do that in the environment I was in, and
and in your MOS,
you had to disclose it. Yeah, and having that, you have to disclose it and everything. Yeah. But I had a security clearance. I was pretty comfortable that I'd be okay until they put me on the polygraph.
Yeah.
Oh man. Well, give us an overview of the Nebraska State Patrol. How many troopers, stations, an overall thumbnail of Nebraska State Patrol.
Great agency, it really is. I mean, and obviously I have history there and a love for that department. And again, I was lucky and blessed to get to do a lot of great things with them. But overall, they have about 480 troopers, and that's give or take a few. I don't know the actual count. I've been gone for, out of there since 2019. They do everything. It's a state police agency, so you can work traffic, you can work the governor's security, you have SWAT, you have dogs, you have investigations, narcotics, all these different entities. That was also intriguing to me, why I kind of went that way.
Yeah.
That, there were a lot of different avenues that a person could go. And I guess the one that I probably did not mention that I should is obviously even their aviation section. So, I mean, there's just a lot of things in there. But they're scattered all over the state, several troop areas, and this is a big state. So the furthest troop area is a 7.5 hour drive from headquarters, which is in Lincoln. There's a colonel who's the superintendent, and I had some great superintendents, and there's a great superintendent in there now that just got appointed, who would do a good job, and excited for the people that are still there, because I think Brian's going to be phenomenal. But yeah, I mean, just a lot of opportunities and a lot of things. And I was lucky enough to kind of went down one career path and stayed there, and got to drive that Mustang for about 6-8 months, and then went to their K9 unit.
Was the Mustang, was that dedicated to traffic enforcement, or was that for other various positions?
No, so it was, you started in traffic or patrol. So, you work the road, and then like most departments, and even Omaha PD, you've got to serve 2-3 years on the street before you can go to specialty units and all that. So I got an old piece of junk, my first car, because that's how you're issued a car, and it's a take home. All your equipment is issued to you. And I always joked about the patrol. They issue you everything but socks and underwear. And they do. I mean, even the T-shirts, that go under your vests and stuff. I mean, but it's also a little different world, because if your car's damaged, your radio's damaged or something, you're totally accountable. There's no, well, I just walked into the briefing room and grabbed one of the radios and oops, the screen's broke. No, I didn't, whatever. Right. It's so it's a different kind of a perspective. And again, I think all that carries over to where we're all at today, flying, and kind of the stuff that's expected of us and keeping track of things. And it kind of guided me down a path that now is probably, allowed me to be in the positions that I've been in.
Was there something that occurred during patrol that influenced you to go the canine route?
That was one of my goals, was to try to be I wanted to be a narcotics investigator and work dogs. I thought that would be kind of a good thing. Always fascinated by that. Got to see him work a little bit in the military. Well, that kind of intrigued me. Again, lucky enough that I spent a few years on the road, very limited as far as, my duty assignment, and got called back to the military while I was on probation. And, when I got back, started over again and worked, they shortened my probation time up because of just being gone and just getting it through it. Just didn't follow the A, B, C, D, F, and G step. They had an opening, put in for a canine handler, and was lucky enough to be selected. And that opened a whole nother door for me. And
oh yeah. Yeah. It changes everything, doesn't it?
That was a fun gig.
Yeah, I assume I could be completely wrong here that it's a dual purpose dog. In that case, is that correct?
Yes, they were dual purpose, narcotics and patrol. And like everybody, my first dog was phenomenal, very good, made me look really good. Thanks to him. Yeah, he was great. We did some really cool drug loads and took a bite out of crime a couple of times here and there, quite a lot. And but yeah, it was, and I always joke, because he died while I was working. He had a seizure, unfortunately. But I always said, I don't know how many times this dog probably saved my life, and I don't even know it, or made somebody not do something that you don't know how it would have went or how it could have went, because dogs, as we all know, are pretty intimidating to a lot of people, and they kind of get people's attention, and I had a damn good one. So
yeah, just having that dog bark in the back of the car a couple times while you're on a traffic stop changes behavior.
Yeah,
it's kind of like racking a shotgun. Yeah. Changes behavior. You don't even have to point it at anybody.
Well, or you get that person that kind of is doing what they do, and you go, "Hey, hold on a minute here, sir or ma'am. They don't pay me to put hands on you, but this, four-legged quadruped right here, he will." And, and if by chance he starts losing, I'm going to check in and help him out.
Yeah. Yep.
I said that a few times, sorry. I was younger.
Any, were they tracking dogs as well? I mean, did you do tracking?
Thank you to our sponsor, AEM. Their revolutionary MTP 136D P25 aerial firefighting radio is U.S. Forest Service approved. It's in stock and ready to ship. Grounded unexpectedly? No problem. AEM stocking dealers across North America are prepared to support all your mission critical needs. Visit aem-corp.com/radio.
Yeah, they tracked and did some of that. I'll be honest with you, was my dogs the best tracking dogs? No, but there are some great ones out there that we've all seen, and that I know they have now too. But
it's amazing what they do.
Super good. He's one of our tactical dogs. Super quiet, and you talk about the barking. and all that, people used to get mad because he would just sit there and stare at you as you walk by. And it was just like, I'm not afraid of you, and just get a little closer and I'm going to introduce myself to you. And he used to scare people, and because all of a sudden they'd look and there'd be a dog there and they didn't even realize, because they're not paying attention. But yeah, I had more people tell me that, and I loved it, how quiet he was, because he put us in some really good situations. And, that was pre to what, obviously we all know what dogs are used for nowadays in the military and all these other places, that we were there and didn't even realize what I think we were actually doing it. Well, we did, but it just had evolved to where it's at today.
Sure. Now you mentioned he was one of the tactical dogs. That means different things to different places. Does that mean he worked with your SWAT team?
Yeah. So he, I was picked up to be on SWAT. I started as an operator, and we had very few dogs at that time that were tested out and just had that natural skill set to be able to work around people. And again, I was lucky. I mean, he was an absolute light switch to the T. In fact, I joke now. I go, knowing what we know, if there was any way we could have genetically done his DNA again, he'd probably be a great dog for somebody out doing other things in the dark. So, but yeah, he was very stealthy, very good, and just an absolute light switch, and had gone on a whole lot of SWAT calls with us.
Wow. So you were doing SWAT and K9 at the same time then, right?
I was. And at the time it was, they didn't have dedicated dog people that were doing it. It was just, I was lucky enough to get picked up to be a SWAT guy and did my time with them. Then the dog transitioned over to it, and he became part of our toolbox. We just developed it from there further and further and further. And then, we used to carry the dogs to calls, to hump them in. Just there was a reason we did that, and it worked pretty well for us, to insert them. Yeah, it was just a good thing, and then just stayed with SWAT and basically stayed there my whole career.
That's really cool that you could do both those positions. Were there other K9 handlers within Nebraska State Patrol that had a dog, but they were on patrol? Is that how it kind of worked? And you just happened to be SWAT as your secondary?
Yeah, and that was it. There were a lot of dog handlers. It's that type A personality that kind of went down that path. So, at the time there were several teams, and then just inside the teams, like you would go assist maybe if they needed a dog, or there were a lot of handlers that were on the team. And depending upon what the call or what you were doing, you would maybe be a SWAT operator, and then, okay, now this is a drug warrant. You get done, everything gets secured and wrapped up. Okay, now I'm going to switch into being a dog handler and search the house with investigators. So yeah, just kind of, it was a sub duty, but I think it all kind of goes hand in hand, because like with anything, most high risk, high events like that, there's usually a K9 handler there with you, on site or on station.
And you can see, if I didn't know you, Frank, and didn't know the rest of your story, I can already see, and I know Jack can attest to it, you're getting set up for nothing but success in an air unit. You've got that medic background, you have the obligatory patrol background, and then you add that K9 and SWAT. All of that dovetails into an excellent airborne, law enforcement air support, operator. Yeah. So it all makes sense. I know when we would do interviews for new TFOs through the years, if you saw somebody that had K9 in the background, we all would get excited, because some of the best TFOs we ever had were previous K9 handlers, just because that skill set, like you said, comes in a lot of the cases you're working. And, we all know this, Jack certainly knows it, are with the K9 guys. And if you understand that job from above, and I know I didn't have a SWAT background, and that hurt me a lot of times when I was working with the SWAT team before we had really good training, because they needed information, and they spoke a language that I didn't. And, so to have all of that stuff stacked up, that just, it makes sense why you were so successful when you went into your aviation career, because you have a perfect setup.
Yeah. And it's ironic you'd say that, because I absolutely agree with you that, and I'm sure we'll probably get into this where I'm currently at. We have 2 former canine handlers, because knowing what we all know, we know how they set perimeters, hunt people, and do the jobs that they do. It is a skill set that's great to have when they are TFOing and working with you, because they see that different perspective. And you're right, it was great training, and it did set me up to be lucky enough to get to where I'm at and where I got to be. So yeah, it was a great opportunity. And you always get asked, oh, do you miss it, Jack?
Yeah. You miss, when people have asked me that, do you miss flying? Yes. Do you miss the canine thing? And I say, well, hold on, yes and no. I miss the hunt. I mean, I miss the hunt part of canine, where you are looking for a very, very bad person, and you're involved in that team. And I don't care if you're the handler, or the shotgun man, or the rifle man, or the rear guard. You're on that team that's hunting. Oh, I'd pay to do that. I'd pay to do that right now, just to be able to get back into that. But do I miss the diarrhea in the back seat? Do I miss the fleas? No, not so much.
The hair,
the hair everywhere. Every time you vacuum, you get back in the car like 2 minutes later, and clumps of hair are floating. You go, I just vacuumed. He hasn't even been in here since I vacuumed. There's the hair everywhere. People don't, the glamour job. I always say, oh yeah, the glamour job of canine. The hunt part is, but the rest of it's very demanding and hard work, and you're constantly cleaning, and you constantly have that smell. I can still smell it. So can you. Where you just go, oh yeah, I smell wet dog right now. I can, smell it. Picture myself driving that car.
Yeah, and it's funny because you take that side. I'm everything you just said is exactly where I'm at too. I missed that, and you guys may not understand this. So we have this thing called winter up here in the Midwest, and we get this stuff called snow. It's this white stuff that falls. And Brian, I know you were in the Antarctic and all that, so I know you get it.
You didn't live there.
Yeah, but it's one thing to visit, but it's also another thing to, it's Thursday and it's snowing and it's basically a blizzard, and you have canine training and you're outdoors in that. And I do not miss that, Jack. And that was always when
I believe. I understand that. I
understand
that.
Cold and in the rain and under cars and in ditches and culverts and muddy and just.
Believe me, I thought about that when I moved from Pennsylvania to Southern California. All right? That was a factor. I'm going to be a cop, and I'm going to be a cop in the sunshine. And I mean, there's something to be said for that. I would think about it regularly and go, I don't know how these people do it. I mean, how do you act as a cop when it's dumping snow and you can hardly see in front of you, and you're still getting calls. And you have to go to these calls, and now a guy bails out of a car, and you got to go hunt for him, and you're tromping through snow. I mean, it's a whole different aspect that adds risk. It actually adds risk. It adds all sorts of factors that SoCal people and Florida people don't really think about that often, But I do understand why you say that.
Yeah. I miss that, but fortunately got the best job in the world right now.
Yeah.
Did you have to take protective measures to protect the dog, your canine, from the cold temperatures, whether it was, his body or his paws?
Well, it's not so much. I mean, yeah, you had to kind of watch, obviously snow and ice and, all that on their paws. But as far as that was the other good thing too, is your car was always warm in the winter because it's running. And your car was always cool in the summer because the dog's in there, so you're lucky you're not climbing into a 100-degree car because, the air conditioner's on, you got, your dog in there. So that was always a plus. But the bad side about being that dog guy or person at the time was we had wash and wears, and then we went to a black uniform, a canine tactical type uniform. So the troopers, if something was going on, they'd be like, well, you go crawl over there and under there because you can get dirty. It was always, well, let the dog guy get dirty because they're always dirty. They're covered in hair and mud and dirt. But that was also a good thing, when you run into one of the captains or the colonel or somebody, you didn't have to be quite as spit and polish.
Yeah.
Because they knew you could always just go, oh yeah, we just got done searching a car. Out,
That's good. That's good.
The pros to it.
So this is all going on. You're having a good time. You're doing SWAT stuff. You're doing K9 stuff. But the air support unit is on your radar at that point, correct?
It was. We utilized them a little bit at the time. Not, it just wasn't. Oh gosh, it just wasn't there. I don't want to. Their focus was traffic and stuff, and the agency had a helicopter. Was right, wrong, or indifferent. It's a different mindset, and kind of, and we'll probably get into that how it changed when I, with my mindset coming in with my background, when I got into the air support unit. We used them, but we didn't use them a lot. And I just kind of always thought they could do more to help us out, especially on the street,
Sure.
hunting bad guys in the middle of the field at night, all that kind of stuff.
And you saw it firsthand that, where, man, it'd be nice if we had this. And we kind of do, but they're not here consistently, or it's not their priority. And that had influence on what you were about to do.
Okay, I'll tell you a story. I mean, or an incident where this is kind of where we had got. A guy had taken a couple crack shots at some officers or some things, and sitting out in the middle, getting ready to go hunt him in the field. And we were sitting there having a conversation. I was a dog guy at the time, and we're like, well, they won't come out. Let's just go deal with it. We didn't call them out. We didn't, and that was wrong on our part. I'll admit that. But, that was just kind of our mindset at that time to, let's just deal with it. We don't want to have them tell us no or whatever. We went and handled that business, and fast forward a couple years later, I'm a dog trainer and I'm a sergeant at the time, and they were looking for a sergeant at the air support unit. And Colonel asked me at the time, our Colonel, he knew I was flying because I was flying planes. We should kind of back that up. I had gotten that bug and was flying planes as, a hobby and something I wanted to do, and got a pilot's license and all that good stuff. And ran into the colonel one day. He said, hey, you ever thought about going over there? And I told him point blank, nope. I'm not going to go work traffic. And, I said, no, it's, again, probably not the right thing to say, but at that time I felt that it was a flying club. That was just my perspective. Nothing against anybody that was there before me, because thank God they were, because they built, they got the aircraft and got things going. But that was my perspective. And he said, well, I think, we're looking at going in a different direction, but we just kind of need a change agent to maybe look at that. And, there was an opening, and I put in and was lucky enough to get selected.
Now, did you do any part-time TFOing or anything before that day that the colonel talked to you as a sergeant?
Yeah, and I did. So the unit at the time was looking for some part-time TFOs, and trying to get some help, because as we all know, it's a limited amount of people, and that also carries over to maybe you can't get them called out because they're timed out, or we all have lives, or things are going on and all that. So they had started looking to get TFOs, and so they did some testing in being a video gamer. And kind of understanding that, I kind of got on and I'm going to age myself, an infometrics. That is what they had at the time.
Yeah.
It's funny. I have one at my office, and it's an old one that sits right behind me at my office. And I remind our guys now that, and I show them old video of what it used to look like.
Oh, that's good that you do that.
That's how men look for bad guys.
Yeah, I mean, compared to where we're at today, and where we'll be in a couple of years probably.
Yeah.
But so I did that and did really well, and started filling in as a part-time TFO whenever I could, and had the airplane side on the back side of that too. So I kind of had a little bit of understanding. Then you add the tactical side. So obviously we look at things different with that type of background, like Brian was mentioning. You kind of know what is expected or what they kind of need. And again, was lucky enough to get put in and went over there as a sergeant. A couple months later, I was the chief pilot, or the commander at the time, retired, and I took the unit over and started building.
Wow, rapid fire.
Yeah.
I mean, just bam, you got thrown into the fire there pretty quick. So let's start with this. Tell us when you got there, tell us what airframes you had and what the status was of the unit from your perspective, because we're going to talk about where it goes. And it goes places while you're there. It'd be spearheaded by you and others, but by you. So let's start with what was there when you got there.
Thank you to our sponsor, SpectroLab. SpectroLab, a pioneer and world-leading supplier of high-intensity searchlights for all para-public operations. Visit www.spectrolab.com to learn more about our third-generation Night Sun series high-intensity searchlight. When reliability and performance is critical to your mission, count on SpectroLab Night Sun searchlights.
At the time, they had about 3 fixed wings and a helicopter, a Jet Ranger, one camera, and infometrics. At the same time, it was able to go on to one of the planes, so it could be swapped out.
Oh, okay. I was going to ask you, what airframe was it on?
Yep, it was on, at the time they had 182 RGs. Great airframe, great aircraft. I loved it. But and it would bounce back and forth, kind of as needed. And, I always wanted to TFO. That was always my thing. I kind of, it's kind of funny, Jack, because I know your background too, and kind of where you started. And to me, it's, kind of neat that I kind of almost mirror a little, you and others, but we've all been kind of through that I think that path, but it was just a little different perspective. I looked at it from the only function and job is to support the men and women on the ground. And I say that today, that's it. And I'll dig my heels in with anybody. That is our job to
as you should.
Yep, to support the men and women on the ground that carry guns and badges. That's it. Now, yes, we carry guns and badges, but our job, we exist for them, and let's make sure that we're doing that. So we had that. Fortunately for me, I'll say this: there were some great pilots there, and a couple of them that were around for several years. Kind of helped me along. I was pretty comfortable. I was a sergeant at the time, had been a sergeant for a while, and just kind of knew that we need to make some changes and it's going to take time. Let's start climbing these hills.
Yeah. Was there reluctance for the changes that you were bringing in?
I don't know if I'd say reluctance, but as anybody, you kind of get set in your ways. And I kind of, again, one of the other things, and you guys have heard me say this, the evolution versus revolution theory that I live by. And I know it's a Frankism, but either we evolve or we get overthrown, so if we're not going to evolve, we will get overthrown, and we're going to become insignificant, irrelevant. And I kind of had that philosophy with, when I was a K-9 person, SWAT, all that, and carried that all the way through. And I still have it today. If you talk to, the guys that I'm lucky enough to work with every day at even Omaha PD, they'll probably say, oh yeah, that's a Frank thing. But I think it's good. I think it holds true. But there was a little reluctancy, but I think also there's that, okay, this is a whole different perspective, and let's go here. Now, did I make some mistakes? Oh my gosh, as we all did.
Yep.
And I wish I would have done things differently, a few things, but I didn't see it at that time. But yeah, we started evolving, and fast forward, we got a new facility, different aircraft, cameras, equipment. We kind of became what I felt was an aviation unit, and a little reluctancy from even maybe the hires, because they like the traffic aspect of getting speeders and that type of stuff, which is a very important function, but it's not the only function. I kind of started arguing that that's just a piece of the puzzle, and that's just one function of everything that we do. Or again, when something happens, we need to get eyes on and deal with it, help out, and keep our people safe.
Was there a specific incident or something going on at that time that spurred the desire to change and move the unit in a different direction, or just kind of had it slowly been developing?
I think it had slowly been developing, but I think that the colonel at the time had a vision. Okay. And he had kind of recognized it, I think, himself coming, because had come through the ranks. And yeah, I think that's kind of where it kind of started a little bit, and it just kind of progressed through. And yeah, there was some changes made that happened.
And as you know, that can be very difficult especially in a law enforcement world that gets very set in tradition, and this is the way things are. And a lot of places know that they want to change, they want to do just something different, and they just can't until, one of very few things happen. Either there's a major incident, and unfortunately it's usually something terrible, and they realize, hey, we needed to do something different, and they change moving forward. Or, like you said, just having that support from the chain of command to be able to get the changes going. Because, as we know, no matter how well-intended and smart the people at the line level supervisor in the unit are, if you don't have support or something to help make those changes and push them forward, you're just stuck banging your head against a wall for a long time. So, it's great that you had that colonel there that had enough vision and confidence in you to allow you to make the changes that needed to be made, because it's extremely difficult.
You're absolutely right. And it was a long process, I mean, kind of started having to sell ourselves. And as we've all heard, there's a cloud in the sky, they won't come.
Yeah.
Okay, you hear that. And I was part of that on the ground at the time. But I can say this, that years later, before I left, there was a trooper, and I had said to him, I go, hey, you interested in aviation or coming online or, coming over here? And he looks at me, and I didn't know him that well, but I mean, he looks at me, and goes, oh, no way. I will never go to no. I go, why? He goes, you guys are running all over the place and everywhere and in the middle of everything, and you're just running and gunning. And that didn't mean anything to him, but I'm fast forwarding. This is 12, 15 years later. I have now have somebody who I have no real connection with other than we're in the same agency. And that is the perception that they had. And I think that's great. And then even after I left, the folks that are there, their goal should be to make it better than it was when they took it. And I think they've carried that over. And like everybody, we all learn and keep doing, moving forward. But that was kind of a moment from, I'll be honest with you. I think we're all very humble. We have to be. But that was kind of a moment when I went, all right, you know what? This is good, and it got to the point where if we couldn't come support, you'd have people saying, oh, yeah, they must be busy because normally they're here, they're coming. And those kind of things that start being said about your unit, I think, justify all the work and the blood, sweat, and tears that everybody did, and all the, the hills that you had to climb and get knocked down, and just the struggles and everything that go along with things. That goes a long ways. And I think that all prepped me for where I'm at today.
Yeah. The perceptions by patrol officers toward law enforcement aviation units are influenced by real things. I mean, they're not making them up. There are units that, that get reputations or they're not there for us when we really need them. And we all know that, we are controlled by, FARs. We are controlled by weather minimums. We are controlled by maintenance issues. We are controlled by a lot of things that prohibit us from being there all the time, even though we want to be. But the fact that the perception changed while you were there, that has to feel good, Frank. I mean, it just has to feel good.
Well, yeah, it absolutely does. And, again, we'll probably be there shortly, but we're currently out with the Omaha Police Department. This is almost I wouldn't call it deja vu, but we're there now. And I'm going to be the first to say this, because I have to say this, surrounded by great people, great bosses. I was lucky in that aspect, because had it have not been for the people that were around me and the mentors and moving forward, and some of the people, I mean, and I know I've said it, I mean, the people like Brian, like you and others, Clay and that whole community that gave me guidance, and that I watched and read their books and looked at, and watched what they were doing and listened to, what they had to say. And fortunately, I was lucky enough to be in several of your classes. All that carries over. And I think that's why the podcast is so important. I think that's why apps is so important. All that information gets passed on, and I don't know a single pilot out there that's not willing to, hey, here's how we do this. Maybe try it like this. Maybe do this. And if you're open-minded and willing to learn, and it happens every day at my office right now. The guys will say something, they're like, oh, hey, we should. Sometimes you go, I don't know, but sometimes you're going, man, you know what? That 500-hour pilot that just brought that up, that is a phenomenal idea. That is a great way to keep us safe. That's this, that's that. It's not all about, oh, you got 10,000 hours. You've been doing this for 20 years. Some of the best ideas and best things that changes come from people. And all you got to do is maybe drop your ego a little bit and listen.
That culture that you're describing is a culture that I wish existed at every agency. I think what you're talking about, the egos, is the major, roadblock to that. And it seems like there's egos everywhere that's preventing that from happening. It's one of the things, before I started the podcast, you're like, oh, this is probably isolated to my agency or a few agencies. But as you start talking to folks from across the world, literally, you realize, no, this is a worldwide problem.
Yes.
You've come across a solution and a culture that is very uncommon. So I commend you for developing that culture and promoting that, because that's huge. I think that's how ultimately you've been successful in these positions, is because you're willing to be open-minded and be like, oh, let's look at that. We haven't done it that way before, but let's try it. Or it didn't work 10 years ago, but maybe it'll work today for a different reason. I commend you for that. That's cool.
I was just going to add to Frank, it takes a lot of patience and a lot of hard work, because we all know it's not just one awesome call that changes that perspective and earns you that reputation, especially in our industry. Yeah, it's 100 calls. It's 1,000 calls you have to do over and over. And just when you think like, how much do we have to do to prove ourselves and get you to stop telling that one story from 5 years ago when someone screwed up, or, and it's over and over. And sometimes it's just, it takes a lot out of you. And you're like, oh, we've done all this work. We've tried this hard, and they're still saying this or saying that. So it takes so much persistence and so much dedication and so much hard work to move a unit into the position that you're talking about. And that's commendable, because quite frankly, a lot of people would give up before getting to that point, just because they're like, it can't be done. We've done it great 100 times. Well, you have. Unfortunately, we're going to have to do it great 200 times to get to where we need to be. But once you get there, you start getting the compliments like that guy said, just in realizing how much the perspective has changed. It makes it all worth it. But man, it's a hard road. So I commend you for sticking it out and now doing it again, because most of us learn our lesson the first time and just stick with that success and talk about it on podcasts to other people. But you're a glutton for punishment, and you took it on again.
Yeah. And I'll say this, and I was lucky enough to get to go to the FBI National Academy, and that's a whole nother piece. But one thing I learned from that and it's funny, Brian, because what you just said, another thing you just said, I've said this and I still say it every day. Insert any department USA, remove said department, insert any department USA. So when I was at the National Academy, you had people from all over the world, right? I was lucky enough to get chosen, lucky enough to get selected and approved to go. I went. My roommate was a colonel from Mongolia. And yes, I said Mongolia. I didn't get somebody from Florida, Las Vegas, LA, places that, great. Now I got to hook up every time I go down to Florida. But the best thing about that is that it was eye-opening, because we had people in my academy class that were from small departments, people from LA, New York, thousands of officers, these big departments to little departments. And when we would be talking and having conversations or visiting or just in class on some of our classes, they would talk about, you would hear the same thing coming out of, somebody from Las Vegas or New York, and you'd go, and then you'd look over and there'd be somebody from an 8-person department in Kansas that I would go, how did you get in here? I worked my butt off to get here. How were you, I'm great that you got here, but how did you get here? And they're talking about the same issue, maybe just on a different level than anybody else, but it's just remove, every department has this almost the same things with leadership, with subordinates, with yourself, everything that goes on, the public, all that stuff. It's just sometimes we get wrapped up in our own little worlds, and I think people just think, well, it's just us. It's here. What John said, it's just us. No, it's not. And I think that carries over to everything that you guys all do too. That the problems that maybe this flight department has is probably not unique. Their struggles, their things, and it's always great to talk to somebody and tell them the motivational side of just keep climbing the hill. You're going to get knocked down. You're going to get told no, but you just got to keep going.
And that's where I think bringing someone in like yourself, Frank, who's got experience of navigating these things, provides motivation and inspiration for the folks that find themselves in the agencies and they're banging their head against the wall like, hey, how long do I have to deal with this? And so it's encouraging to hear someone like you who's climbed the hill before and can offer some insight and how that hill was won. That's just my opinion, but I think it's inspiring.
No, it's a good opinion. It's true.
It's time for your Heli Life giveaway buzzword. Listen up and remember this word because you'll need it to enter for a chance to win exclusive Heli Life gear. Ready? This episode's buzzword is airborne. Visit contest.verticalhelicast.com to enter the buzzword.
I always kind of tell the guys too, I'm like, okay, hey, I'm going to predict this is how this is how this is probably going to go. We're going to do this. This will probably happen. We try to play that game of expect this. And I think that goes back to just all of us as law enforcement officers. You have plan A. Well, that didn't work. So now you have to have a plan B, C, D, E, F, and G. We're going to do this, but now we get this. We got to go here, kind of being able to move on your feet and, always having a backup plan when it goes. Yeah. But it carries over to flight safety with everything Brian's taught us all. Hey, if this happens, this is probably, what you need to do. Okay, did that. That didn't work. Now you got to go here. You got to do this. You have to be able to work through these problems and start recognizing things. And I think it all encompasses one way or the other. But I'll end this side with this is that you're only as good as the people you're surrounded by. We all know that. And I again, I know I've said it a couple times here. I was blessed to be surrounded by people when I was with the patrol. And every day I go to work now at the Omaha Police Department, I have got some great pilots and great staff above us, below us, our officers. You're only as good as the people that are around you. And fortunately, even right now, I'm surrounded by some great pilots. And we have a chief and mayor and council and people that support us to get things done or help us move forward in the vision or in the, where we want to get ourselves to.
I think you kind of touched on something that I've seen in a lot of places, and I'm going to tell you it was something that I struggled with as well, is a lot of supervision within the air support units is given to someone who is a pilot. And I think we all can recognize and accept that it takes more than being a good pilot to be an effective air support unit leader. Obviously, we also have the opposite problem where there's leaders that have no aviation knowledge and that there's challenges with that. But I'd ask you, Frank, because you've been successful and, and again, I struggled with it. What advice would you give that guy who's been a unit pilot, been in there for a while, an opening for a chief pilot, unit sergeant, whatever they want to call it, opens up and they say, hey, that's you. And, the guy's just been a pilot. How can they now learn how to lead that unit, how to manage that unit and navigate, like you said, navigate that very difficult administrative gauntlet that's required to get things done. There's politics involved. There's interpersonal relationships. There's an understanding of budgets and things that a lot of, a line pilot just hasn't had exposure to. And maybe doesn't have that skill set.
When every second counts, trust Night Flight Concepts to keep you mission ready. With advanced night vision technology, FAA-certified repair services, and expert training, we've got your six. Visit nightflightconcepts.com to learn more.
I think probably the big thing is there's a lot of information out here. The podcast, you know, listen to Clay, listen to the Phoenix guys, listen to all the stuff that you know you guys are putting out. There's so much information that you can go, oh, we are dealing with that, or maybe, you know, hey, you know, they split it off where they have their flight or their fixed wing side and their helicopters. That's kind of unique and cool the way that they've done that. Maybe that's what you need to do. And I think it's just learning and be always studying, if that's the right word. Now, you know, sometimes we get stuck in our ways, which we all do, but I think just having an open mind and maybe being able to listen and ask other people. I mean, pick up the phone. It's okay to go, I don't know. How do we do this? How do we do that? But I will say this. One thing that I've done a lot with the Omaha Police Department that I think was very valuable and critical is, you know, you have staff function and line function, right? We all get that and understand that. But most aviation units are expensive. I mean, well, they are. You know, when I got to Omaha, I sat down and started explaining and inviting the director of finance out, our IT folks, people, you know, who support us, the purchasing folks, invite them out and maybe be open enough and to show them what you do, how you do it, and explain to them why this camera costs this much and why we have to have training, why we have to have all these things. And I think that's been a big part of the success that we've had now with Omaha Police Department, is to kind of open those doors and invite people and show them and explain it to them. Because when they do see, what do you mean you're buying $4,000 worth of flight suits? They don't understand. But if you take the time to market yourselves, and I'm not talking just with the public, with the people who maybe, and we've had people who said this, well, I've worked here for 15 years. I didn't even realize all this. And I think, you know, building those relationships go a long way within your department and with being successful. Also understand and don't take it personal when somebody goes, hold on, because they don't understand. They don't, but also sometimes you can all do I'm a pilot. I got, you know, FARs and regs and all this stuff. Well, that doesn't mean a lot to them. So maybe breaking things down, and I'm using the analogy of a cell phone. Hey, would you go back to a flip phone? Well, no. Some people, do you even know what a flip phone is? But, you know, you kind of break it down that way and you go, look, technology is advancing and things are happening and it's expensive, but to stay relevant and to keep up, because we don't want to find ourselves 10 years from now going, oh, shoot, we're basically irrelevant. We can't really help. And that goes over into the whole, I know I'm jumping ahead, Jack, and I'm sorry a little bit.
Oh, no, this is perfect. This is how it works. Believe me.
That goes into where we're at now with the drones. I'm an advocate for drones. They're not going to replace our helicopters. I have the drone unit at OPD. We're advancing. We're augmenting those, or, you know, interlacing those resources. But I think being able to show and tell and explain and maybe explain things where people understand it. You don't have to explain it from an aviation perspective, but where an accountant will understand it. I think that goes a long ways, because now when you pick up the phone and go, hey, they inspected this, we found this, it's going to be this much. Other than, as we've all done, fall out of our chairs and go, oh boy. Being upfront and explaining it, you know, in detail and accurately, I think is the key. And I think that goes a long ways. I just invited somebody from our purchasing and all their office. I said, why don't you come out? And it was all over flight suits, because she said she had never been to the hangar. And I'll be honest, I don't know her other than to talk to her. I'm like, well, here, you have my information. Schedule some people in the office. You're more than welcome. We would love to host you. And that's exactly what we do. And I think that goes a long ways, even with your commanders.
Sure.
You know, your precinct captains, your whoever, invite them out, show them.
You know who I hear when I hear him talking, John?
Eric Widener?
Eric. Yes, yeah. Exactly. Who was also an extremely successful unit commander, got a lot done. So a very common thread. That's excellent. Thank you, Frank.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Those partnerships are so crucial. Like you, Frank, we would host barbecues and we'd open up our hangar for city personnel. And a lot of times we dedicate, okay, this barbecue is for IT. This barbecue is for finance, purchasing. And they could come up and we'd spend the time as a unit showing them the equipment we use, take them up on a flight, see how that equipment actually helps apprehend people, whatever the mission set is. But ultimately, we were describing those partnerships, and those partnerships are so important. And there was naysayers, there was people be like, why are we doing this? Thought it was a waste of time, waste of effort. Really kind of bothered them that we had to have these open houses. But man, the return on investment was huge, and you described that in a way, Frank, that really hits home and makes a ton of sense. So thanks for introducing that, Brian, into the conversation, because I think that's a really, really important concept that a lot of people don't really take advantage of.
Yeah. And it leads to this next question, really, because what I was about to ask when we went down that path, it's perfect lead into this question. You brushed over it, Frank. Tell us about, while you were there with the state, how the aircraft changed. When the aircraft we talked about it, when you got there, tell us what it was like when you left.
I think it was better than it was when I got there, which is your goal. And then fortunately, the guys that were there when I did leave, took it to the next level and, changed it as they should. And then don't kid yourself, I made some mistakes. I wish I would have done some things differently or accomplished more. But, I think that's also a testament to the folks that were there after I left to go to, keep going. By the time I had left, we had a new facility, which was really nice. And I'll tell you, I joked at the time. We had gotten at one of those big, huge mobile command posts, the big, dun, 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 here we are, the Nebraska State Patrol at the time. Here it is. Had to have a CDL and all this stuff. Well, we'd gotten one of those. And at the same time, we had started looking at, we can do more. This is where we're at. But again, the patrol flew Bell products. We could go to another Jet Ranger or, an Airbus or whatever. But we started looking at, if we went to a better helicopter, we could do more. We could, move dogs. We could do some tactical insertions, some operations. We would have the speed to get across the state and do things differently. So kind of that evolution versus revolution. We don't want to stay right where we're at. We don't want to be stagnant. Let's try to move forward. Let's grow. Let's not just sit here. And we were lucky enough to, we got a 407, and that changed things differently, obviously, as you know, with speed, useful load, and the state mission is statewide. So you might travel 100 miles to a call. Now maybe the better thing to do is an airplane, but we started looking at even those, and we were lucky. And we're always selling things. We're trying to sell it without them knowing we're selling it. I think that's kind of what we're always doing. You're always marketing yourself and trying to, we could do this, we could do that, we could do this. It was time to replace aircraft, so we did. We changed out, and you went to turbo stationaries. With the G1000, technology was moving this way. We kind of had to keep up. Again, going back, we had the right governor, the right colonels and the staff, but I think we had shown the value in what we could do up to that point, that the sky was the limit. And now I'm on the backside of that going, but look, if we do this, we could do this, we could do more, we can start doing these other things. And that's kind of how that worked. Now going back to that bus that I was talking about, so we had gotten a new helicopter, but they had also gotten a bus. So I started looking at it. We were in I'll tell you, I used to take a couple people to, we were in an old T hangar, one office, there was 2 desks, a computer workstation in the middle, and the restroom was right here. The door, that's where the bathroom was at. That was our office. So it was, when vendors would come out and people would come out, you're just not real proud of where you're at, but that's where you're at, And so we had gotten this motor home, and I started talking to our staff about developing and getting building a hangar and something that we wanted to do. And they agreed to it. But to this day, I always say that hangar was built, the hangar that they're in, which is really nice, was built so they could house the super bus at the time, not our aircraft or us. It was to keep that bus.
Yeah, if that helps, whatever it takes, right?
I'm totally with you. At the point, I was selling it going, oh, look, we could put the bus in there. We could do all this stuff. But in the same token, I'm going, we could have a really nice facility. Yeah. And we did, and they do. And they built, there was another hangar built that we had a facility out west, built another hangar. and it kind of developed and grew, and they're still continuing to develop and grow, which is, kudos to them. And someday when I leave Omaha, I know they will, because of the people that are there now, the pilots and everyone, it'll continue to grow and build. But
well, there's lots of hangars with SWAT armor and command posts in them across this country, and as it should be. I mean, it's appropriate. I mean, it helps. If it helps you get it, in that case, great. Who cares if that command post is taking up a little space? You got a new facility out of it, and it was a way to sell it and help somebody else out on your team. That's great. So you're not alone there. That's for sure.
It worked. I mean, at the end of the day, that's what mattered to me, is I'm like, it worked.
And all the things that you talked about in answering Brian's question are the reason that you ended up getting these things. I think that's the most important point about it, is that all the leadership things that were discussed there, those are all elements in getting stuff, and convincing people. It takes a voice that they trust and that has a good reputation, and that has some background and experience to go to them and say, hey, this is what we need and this is why, and we'd appreciate your support on this. And let me show you why we need it. And you sold it, and you left that place in a better way than when you got there. And that's what we all try to do. I mean, sometimes we're successful, sometimes we're not, but you were successful there, but absolutely successful there. I do want to ask you though, this is because we've had guests with, statewide and, large areas, but what are the challenges supervising a unit across an entire state? I mean, you have assets and personnel that are not all on the little island at your hangar. There's multiple places. There's multiple things that you need to deal with. Is that how it was in Nebraska, or was it kind of centrally located where you could have a grasp on it all the time?
Thanks for joining us for this episode of the Hangar Z Podcast. Don't forget to like and subscribe to hear more stories that promote the personnel and equipment behind the missions in public safety aviation. Lastly, stand by for a message after a word from our sponsors. Cheers. When every second counts, trust Night Flight Concepts to keep you mission ready. With advanced night vision technology, FAA-certified repair services, and expert training, we've got your six. Visit nightflightconcepts.com to learn more. Thank you to our sponsor, AEM. Their revolutionary MTP-136D P25 aerial firefighting radio is U.S. Forest Service approved. It's in stock and ready to ship. Grounded unexpectedly? No problem. AEM stocking dealers across North America are prepared to support all your mission-critical needs. Visit aem-corp.com/radio.
Thank you to our sponsor, SpectroLab. SpectroLab, a pioneer and world-leading supplier of high-intensity searchlights for all para-public operations. Visit www.spectrolab.com to learn more about our third-generation Night Sun series high-intensity searchlight. When reliability and performance is critical to your mission, count on SpectroLab Night Sun searchlights.
We hope you enjoyed this conversation with Chief Pilot Frank Peck. Frank's leadership style is inspiring. He has always taken his responsibilities seriously and finds ways to accomplish the goals of the unit. Thank you for sharing your journey, Frank. John and I just returned from ABSCON Phoenix, and we were overwhelmed by the support from so many of you that visited the booth. We cannot thank you enough. We're dedicated to continuing this podcast with the best guests we can find so that all of us can learn more. MHM Publishing, our sponsors, and our followers are the reasons we can get this done. Thank you to all of you. Stay safe, and we'll catch you the next time on the Hangar Z Podcast.